You're listening to Daycare Overhaul, doing childcare better, presented by Childcare Biz Help.
Hi everyone, welcome to Daycare Overhaul,
where we do childcare better.
Wow, we have quite a change today that we're going to bring to the table.
If you're watching, you're probably really thrown off. It's not just Caroline and I.
Yeah, we have our whole team here today.
Well, almost our whole team.
An ensemble of guests here.
It is an ensemble. How about we start by maybe introducing ourselves? Or how do you want to start?
Well, today's going to be a little bit different.
Okay.
So we're not going to do the typical topic solution kind of podcast. We decided that it might be a really neat idea to essentially offer 4 perspectives of the childcare industry and ask questions to each other. So we've compiled a list of questions and we're each going to offer our very different kind of perspective on it because we all come from different backgrounds.
We do, and we'll get into introductions here and explain kind of what our background is, but our goal today is to really provide our listeners with different perspectives that they can take into consideration at their childcare center when they're trying to implement things or working with families, working with their employees. So we're going to touch on some serious topics, some kind of lighter topics, and
we've got all of the questions for all the things.
But I also wanted to add too, because it's so easy to get stuck in that typical mindset. So it is good. It's probably a good idea that we're having all these different perspectives because sometimes you just are so stuck in that mundane, this is typical.
An echo chamber.
Yeah. So this hopefully will just refresh your mindset, your spirits about childcare, right?
I'm excited. Thank you, Nick, for putting the idea out there. Nick is the reason behind this. So how should we do this? Should we get started?
So, yeah, let's just go around the table and introduce ourselves and kind of give our background as it relates to childcare. So what our perspective essentially is.
Also, for just the people who are watching on YouTube, if you see something different on camera, it's just because we should have explained that earlier. This is a different audio setup, too.
Oh, true.
So people might be like, what the heck is in the center of there? It's our recorder, so...
And I'm going to preface that
I'll leave occasionally to do video stuff.
Or if our dog comes in and starts messing with the set.
Gunny is a member of the team, so he may make an appearance. Yeah. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just an unexpected day. We don't really know how today's going to go. So let's get started. How about I start first?
You start.
Okay. So Caroline Jens, I actually founded Childcare Biz Help 3 years ago. And my background in early childhood education, I didn't have one. And so I had a finance background in banking, and I was a mom. And
looks right at
Nick.
Kid.
I look at Nick because Nick is my son. For those of you
I don't know
who
that
do
you
not
want to
know
say
that.
Was.
He still is my son.
You're still a mom.
I'm still a mom. So my child care background, really was just being a mom. And that was my exposure. He went to a childcare center when he was little. I was a working mom, and that was my main exposure to the industry. And then, as you know, I met Justina working at a childcare center, which I ended up working at as an executive director, which is kind of a fluke. And so, my perspective is going to come from not only being a mother whose child went to daycare, but also from that executive director standpoint, that business mind, the business aspect of childcare. So that will be my perspective today.
Okay. Well, my perspective, Justina Patterson, with Caroline at Childcare Biz Help. So my background is also not in childcare. So when I came into childcare, I entered as a teacher, and I was a toddler teacher for 5 years, give or take, and then transitioned into leadership in a management role. So my perspective is actually very different because it's not only a teacher side, I can see the teacher aspect, but I can also see leadership and business and that sort of thing.
Perfect.
Well, I was a kid once who was in childcare, so I have so I worked in childcare as a floater and like an assistant teacher for about 2 years. I think it was 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And that was over the course of a couple of years. So I went to college and then came back to do more work. And I also currently have a daughter who is just pushing 7.5 months. And we're getting to that point where we're considering childcare as like a real viable option for us. So I think that kind of has shifted my perspective from the perspective of an employee to a parent in a really kind of interesting way. So
that's Nick, by the way.
I'm Nick. I didn't say my name.
You didn't say your name.
Oh no, I'm Nick Minogue. That's my name.
I have a fun fact about Nick. Is Nick and I worked together in a classroom for a while. My co-teacher at the time only worked till 3 o'clock, so he came and relieved her. So we were co-teachers.
Yeah, right before you ascended to leadership as your true calling.
I'm Maddie Maynard. I have no childcare. Well, I
pump the brakes.
God, pump the brakes. I studied more so for older children, more so of middle school and high school. So I do have knowledge of more so of like the lesson academic and behavior aspects knowledge. Mother, if you are listening, I am not pregnant, so it's okay. I have to put that out there. I just told my mom, like, we have podcasts now. And she's like, oh, tell me. And then we start off with kids. Mom, I am not. But we all talk about, the future and stuff. So, more so of that's longer down, in the future, but something that I still have to consider. So although I would say if you were to take the top 4 of people who are more heavily involved in that childcare industry, I would be in 4th place of everybody else of the hierarchy.
But you did student teach, and so you were getting the kids after they were in childcare, in the older kids. So you got to experience the after effects.
Oh, yeah.
Well, cool. So this is really neat. We all have a very different background. We all work for the same company, but
I
why
don't
are
know
you
why,
laughing at me?
I just am excited to be here, and it just is making me laugh. Okay, sorry.
That's good. I thought maybe I had something on my face.
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Well, should we...
Sorry, I had to get my notes out.
All right, get your notes out.
So we have questions, so we'll all just take turns asking the questions, and then everyone will give their answer.
Sounds good.
Do you want to ask the first question?
All right, I'll do it. This is Caroline, by the way.
Do we need to say that? Do we need to? I don't know.
I think our voices are pretty distinct. I might have to say something. I sound like you guys.
You sound very, very.
I sound like a 12-year-old on camera, so I'm good.
If Gunny comes in, he might sound a little different.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so I'm going to start with the first question, and Justina, you'll be the first person to answer.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, okay.
All right, so...
What if I wanted to answer first?
Oh, actually, maybe Nick's going to answer this one first, after reading it. Nick, you're going to answer this one.
Gotcha.
Some of us have children, some older and some brand new, and some of us will be considering adding to our families in the future. What would be important to you in a childcare center? So you're a new dad.
Mm-hmm. So for me, after working in childcare, the importance for me was more of the safety of the students, and making sure that they're healthy and they're eating, and just it may sound primal, but like the survivability of like the classroom and like making sure that they're healthy and taken care of is I think in the forefront of your mind all the time. And as a parent, obviously that's important to me, but now I'm considering these other aspects, like, a deciding factor for me would be like, is Adeline is the name of my daughter. Is she getting something that's going to help her learn? Is she going to get something that's going to make her mind work and not just her body? Is she going to get something that, even though she's so young, there are developmental milestones that she needs to hit, especially socially. And is she going to get that where she's going? And that's definitely something I never thought about when I was working in childcare. So yeah, it's a big factor. I think that's probably the most important thing for me is the social aspect, because a lot of the stuff, if you think of like homeschooling, I feel like, after being a parent for as long as I have now, I feel like I could do
a whole 7 months.
I know it's felt like a lot longer than 7 months. I feel like as a parent between me and my wife that we can do almost anything together except for the social part. I feel like there's something about introducing your child to other children that you can't get anywhere else that you can do at a childcare facility.
Great point. Very good point.
And that is my answer.
That's a good perspective.
Maddie can follow that.
Perfect. You kind of took part of the first part of what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I would say the safety and security. I know earlier podcasts we were talking about, the absolute worst thing that you want to happen, but I'm a worrier. I'm a huge worrier, and all that I think of is the safety of my kids. So the absolute devastating thing of what if someone came in and, did something horrific with my child, or even just in general, like if I look at a cabinet and it doesn't look sturdy, like I just think like, oh gosh, my child is going to go and like touch that and just, I just think of the worst case scenarios, and I want that security of when I give them, that they are completely okay and they're going to be in all one piece.
Peace of mind.
So you're going to be one of those parents.
Yeah.
Everyone listening's like, don't come to my center.
It's like, no, I'll be the fun one. I just am like, I'll never tell you that I'm worried. That's the thing. I'll never be that parent that'll be like, oh my gosh, like tell me everything. Like it's just, I would keep it to myself. And that would definitely make me not want to be part of like a center if I had those concerns. I would never tell you though.
I have a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
Do you think if you were to go to a center, you would want them to tell you their safety and security measures, or as long as you could see it and feel it, that would be comforting enough for you?
I'd rather them say it just because you don't want to assume. Mm-hmm. You never know. You might think something is like 100% great, and then you hear that it's in some different way or a different procedure that I might not be like fully aware of it, or even just thinking like, oh yeah, it looks like they have all these features, and then you tell me that you're like, oh yeah, and then we have this protocol for something else or whatever it may be, then I'll be like, I never even thought about that. Okay, thanks. Like, thanks for telling me that.
Right, and I think that's a really great point, because one thing we train our clients on when they're giving a tour is to ask that one question: what is the most important thing that you're looking for in a childcare center? So you would answer safety and security. And so then as I'm giving a tour, I'd want to expand on that for sure. Mm-hmm. What about you, Justina?
So I think I have two.
Okay.
Well, safety and security is important. And I think that would go hand in hand with qualified teachers. Not necessarily having, the best education or whatever, but they're qualified to do their job and they're good at it. Like I would want to know what kind of training you do for your teachers, how do they keep up their, in the state of Wisconsin, you have to have continuing education hours. So if they need that in the state that you're in, like, how do you do that? How is that quality maintained? Mm-hmm. How are you making sure that they're giving the best care to the children?
That's good.
And kind of going off what Nick and Maddie both said, like to make sure the child's safe, but that they're getting quality care.
That's crazy. I didn't even think about that. So this is why the different perspectives things is so interesting, because I just assume immediately like, well, if they're working there, they must know what they're doing. That idea that even could be a problem is not even something that crossed my mind.
Well, and not that that they know what they're doing, but that they're good at it and they care.
Right.
Because I think that those are two totally different things.
For sure. And I think when I look at this question, I too look at staff. Like that's the first thing that kind of pops in my brain. But for me, it's the positivity. Like I want to know positivity and energy. I want to know that when I drop my child off, that they are going to bring joy to my child during the day, that they're not going to be crabby, that they're not going to be negative. And so I want to make sure that when I do drop my child off, that these teachers are going to be happy and they're going to want to dance with you and just like goof around with you. So for me, that's kind of, what I'm hoping for in a teacher. Mm-hmm. Well,
definitely important.
All right. Who wants to take on the next question?
I can say it.
Okay.
Alrighty. What is that challenge that what is that challenge that you had working in the industry that maybe you were afraid to take to your boss? So,
what is a challenge?
What's a challenge working in childcare that you were afraid to bring to your boss, Justina?
I think.
Wait, be careful.
Well, this executive director we had this one time named Caroline. No, I'm just joking. I would say the dynamic of a co-teacher. I firmly believe, and I will say this time and time again, to find one person that you can work seamlessly with and effortlessly with is very hard. And I think oftentimes things happen because you're two totally different personalities and you butt heads, and that's awkward. It's uncomfortable. And sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to just deal with it. So bringing that up to a boss when you know that you might think there's nothing they can do about it anyway, so I have to just deal with it. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's uncomfortable saying I don't like this person, or not that you don't like them, but you don't get along with them. So I think that's like one thing that I didn't until because I was in that situation, and I didn't say anything until someone like basically flat out asked me, and then it was like bleh, like it all came out, and they're like, whoa. But I just dealt with it and I suffered essentially.
But the moral of the story is I really don't think that there's certain things that you can't change, but I think your boss would have liked to have known before it got to the point where you had to vomit all over them, this negativity,
And really, had I said something earlier, could it have been fixed? Mm-hmm. And I feel like once you've had that situation where you have like literally the world's best co-teacher in the face of the earth, and you go either from prior to that you didn't, you're like, how did I live so long like this? And then if you go from a really great co-teacher to one that you don't mesh as well, you're like, oh, I just wish I had that back. So finding like your happy co-teacher marriage is...
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah,
for sure.
I kind of want to add on to that because mine's almost the same thing. I was really proud of this, what I wrote on my notes. So I definitely needed help with understanding the strategies of what to do when you have a difficult student or child. I struggled with that. And also that when I came to my boss or my co-teacher or whatever, and I just was at a loss of words and I'm like, I just need help. Don't cop out and not give me an answer and make me think of it. Because for me personally, if I don't necessarily, it's hard to get your coworkers to tell you what's wrong. Cause usually, like we said before, they'll say, I'm fine. I'm that type of person. I'll say, I'm fine. If I have that courage to come to you and then you make me try to let's work through it together. And I'm the one that's mostly talking. That's not really what I want. I want you to give me the most guidance that you can and being like, hey, I know you may not have the answer. That's fine. But my brain's exhausted. I don't know what to do. I thought of everything. Don't make me feel like I'm alone. I had the courage to come up, say something. Don't make it where it's just me talking. Does that make sense?
That's such a good point because from a manager's perspective, in response to you, one thing that we do try to do is have you kind of talk through the scenario out loud. So the first thing, if you come to me, the first thing I'm going to do is just what you said. Maddie, let's work through it together. Why don't you tell me what you would do in that situation? And that would probably frustrate you now that I'm listening to what you have to say. So that's interesting to know that there's that other perspective, that you don't want someone to make you have to work through it in your head. Help me, give me real specifics on what to do.
Cool. Well, I think, you talking about having to talk to your boss or your leadership team about a student and you having behavioral problems with a student too. Yeah. In my opinion, that's one of the hardest things as a teacher because it's weird because, you are an authority figure, but you're not their authority figure. You're not the one that they trust. And maybe after being their teacher for an extended period of time, you can become that. But for instance, I was a floating teacher for a long time where I was going to classroom to classroom to classroom, and it felt impossible to have any sort of pull on the students, at least the older ones, where they would trust me enough to listen to what I had to say. And it's not really frustrating, that they're not listening. It's more frustrating because then you feel like you're not doing your job, because your job is to make sure that, everyone's being safe with each other and that they're respecting each other. And if you can't do that, that can be a big struggle. And to also talk on Justina's point, I think that you and me, because I only got there at 3, I think we worked together for like a few hours and then you were gone, that I think it was like impossible for me and you to like mesh. I mean, I think I was in your classroom for like 4 months.
Quite a while.
It was quite a while. And I think that, you really got to find someone that's good for you. But at the same time too, I think you need to understand boundaries when I hope I tried my best to be like, this is your room. So you have your own policies in place. And as like an employee, I need to like respect those, because this is, I am a visitor in your place. You know what I mean? It's not my room.
No, and I think just going back off that, you are always really good about coming in and say like, what can I do? And it's just like, just tell me what to do. And I think that's a very different mindset as a floater teacher. Cause you, like you said, you're kind of just visiting everybody, as opposed to being a co-teacher where you're always working together. It's kind of both your domains, as opposed to, you're just visiting for a little while.
Right. I have a little bit of a different perspective.
No way.
What?
So I bring to the table having leaders that are under me. So a leadership team. So the challenge I have is when there is friction between your leadership team, and I actually have an owner to be accountable to. Okay. So there's that challenge to me of what do I want to divulge to the owner in terms of the friction that's going on in my leadership team. So there was a dilemma in my situation where, is this something I can handle on my own? You don't necessarily want to get the owner involved until it escalates to a certain point. So there's that internal kind of fight that goes on as an executive director on what line, when do you bring that to the owner versus just trying to handle it on your own. So for me, that, being afraid to take something to your boss when you're an executive director, your boss is the owner. And so there's kind of a different fear that goes on with what do you bring to them.
Right.
Well, that can relate with being a teacher too, though. I mean, I think to an extent, no one wants to go talk to the director like a tattletale. True. To be like, why this person's not, you want to try and fix the problem. At least I would hope that you would want to try and fix the problem within, your own group before you bring it somewhere else. I don't think anyone wants to be that person, even at your level. You don't want to be, well, this person's having trouble now. And it's almost like you're spilling the beans, to the owner or to your director or whoever. So
that's a good point. Good point, guys. All right.
I'm going to ask the next question because I think this is one I put down.
Okay.
Yeah. So I called it your childcare deal breaker. Let's say you go to her center. You loved everything that they did. Everything except for one thing. And that was you're like, nope, we're not coming here. What's your one thing?
Mine sounds really dramatic. And I wrote down, I want you to know your stuff. Like, stop selling and stop saying it's the best, the best, the best. Like, I want to see those relationships with those teachers. I want to see that you're just comfortable with people. Like, stop saying like, yep, and we got great food and we have this and this and this. It's like, yeah, I know you're going to say that. Like, show me something else too. Like, bring up other little things that are in your center. Or like, is a little kid maybe going to come up to you and be like, oh my gosh, hi, Miss Maynard, like, how are you? Like, I like to see that. Then I know, like, maybe my kid will do that.
All right, so I'm going to piggyback off of what Maddie said, because I think it's really important to know that if you see a child run up to a teacher and hug them, or when you're the center director and you're giving someone a tour and the kid looks at the director like, Miss Susie, I've missed you today. Like, you truly know that director has been invested in those kids' lives. And that they're making an impact. And to me, like, that would be a deal breaker in the opposite way. Like, if I see kids going and hugging the teachers because they're so happy to see them, I'm going to be like, this place is great. So the deal breaker on the other side of that would be if that director has literally no passion when they're giving me a tour, whoever's giving me the tour, they're not smiling. You can tell they don't really believe in what they're saying, kind of what you said.
Like a mundane,
Right.
going through everything, just they've done it 1,000 times.
Right, like they truly aren't invested in it. Or if the teachers, when you're going through the hallways and they're not smiling at you. Because again, it tells me what the culture is like. So for me, a deal breaker is if no one's smiling, you're not feeling any energy. That's like, no, I don't want my child to be there.
Which is kind of like the dramatic other side of like mine, where it's like sales, where it's just, I want that, like, that in between of just being normal, like just yourself, you know?
Right.
So I feel like mine's probably a little bit strange. I have 2 again.
Wait, that doesn't surprise me because you've got weird.
Can I guess what it is?
Yes.
Is it smells?
No, it's not.
I'm really surprised. That's a great guess.
Wait, did you think that's what it was too?
I did. I mean, I think she was spot on. I'm curious. What is it?
Okay, so one, if I were to hear a teacher yell.
What kind of, what do you mean?
Like yelling at a child. Like, I feel like it's one thing if like they're just yelling and being loud, you know, like they're having a good time yelling, as opposed to yelling at a kid, like, don't do that, or hey, stop it.
Have you seen that before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See, and now that's weird because I would assume I'm like, that's a behavior you do not do. Like, for me and like teaching, I was like, if you ever yell, like, you lost that battle. So I never saw teachers do it. And even if they did, it was just kind of like, no, why? So that's surprising that that's an actual thing that happens.
Well, and it's funny that would be my deal breaker, because I've been that teacher, not yelling at a kid, but yelling because the kid was going to hurt themselves and I couldn't get them to them quick enough because I was changing a diaper and I saw a kid going to hurt themselves, and so I instinctively just yelled to try to stop them. So I feel like because I've been there, I would be able to differentiate between, are they trying to interrupt an injury, or are they yelling at a child for doing something wrong?
It sounds very different. You can tell the difference.
Yeah.
So that would be one. And the second one is if the children are dirty. And it's not mealtime. Like, if they're mealtime, I don't expect that. But if it's, 10 in the morning and they have breakfast on their face or boogers on their nose or on their shirt, I would be like... So
that's
for me,
interesting.
For me as a teacher, I was so particular. Like, yes, they're going to get dirty at breakfast and lunch and snack, but change their clothes, wipe their face off. I would never, ever want a child to go home to their parent being dirty.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than if a parent picks up and the kids just got dry crusties all over and lunch is still there. What does that tell you from a parent's perspective? Did you even pay attention to my child today?
Yeah, it just seems like, because there's no way. Well, yeah, it means either 2 things. It means either 1, they didn't notice that the kids are dirty and it's not a priority for like their hour to hour 30. I mean, childcare lives in intervals of 30 minutes essentially, or at least our center did. And so if every 30 minutes you're not noticing that your kids are dirty, then there's something really wrong. Or B, that they do notice and they just don't care. Both of those are terrible. So yeah, that's a big no-no.
For me, obviously being childcare, if it's right after breakfast and they're in the process of, like, I would understand that. Right. But if it's a time where it's not just just over mealtime and these kids are filthy, I would be like, really? Because I never wanted to send a kid home with dirty clothes, even if they got like dirty outside. Change their clothes. Wipe their face off. So that I know it's kind of silly, but
no, it's not silly.
Yeah.
I think for me, obviously you have like the really obvious ones, like safety problems and things you'll notice with that. And I think just from listening to you guys, it seems like that teacher actions are a big part of like a determining factor. And for me, I think this relates to the teacher a little bit, but if I don't see artwork on the walls so when we were just starting this business, we were looking at a lot of different childcare centers. And I noticed that in some pictures, some classrooms just didn't have a lot of, it didn't seem like an early learning center. It seemed like a school. And that is not what an early learning center is supposed to look like. At least I think until like school ages. One of the best parts about our center when we were working is I felt like every room had a ton of artwork, a ton of really fun stuff that was created by the students that are in those rooms on the walls to show them that they did something and to show the parents when they walk in. I think is one of the cool. I remember working on stuff on the hallway out because our center was one long hallway where a bunch of rooms kind of shot off of. Right. I loved working on stuff that was in that main hallway so that every time someone walked down, they saw like, this is what our kids did. This is what our kids accomplished. If I'm walking into a room and I barely see any artwork, I want to be able to walk in and be like, oh, Adeline made this. Adeline made that. I remember when she did this, even though it was 2 months ago, like it's still there. Like that to me is crucial. Because that means that they're being engaged with in a different way. Right. And yeah.
Well, but you do have to, it has to be tasteful, right?
Yes.
There's a line that you can't cross. There could be too much artwork.
I mean, yeah.
It's too much
that's very true. That's very true.
So kind of on the other side, if there's just too much going on, but no, it actually fits one of your needs for childcare is education. Mm-hmm. So that makes complete sense for you.
Did everyone answer?
I think so.
Caroline did you? Yep, I did.
What was yours?
Mine was the teacher smiling and the director having a relationship. Yeah. All right, this is a good one.
So Maddie's going to read it.
Yeah, let me read
All right, Maddie.
it. Online presence. What do you look for?
This is going to be... I want to answer first because I feel like all of our answers are going to be very different. Because as a millennial, I look at how modernized the website is. Because recently I sent you a certain center. I don't know if their website looked like it was made in 2005, and immediately when I see something like that, I feel like the people who work there maybe don't have a modern view on their center, or they're inexperienced. Which, granted, inexperience in their online care doesn't mean they're not good teachers, right. But it does mean I think there's a certain modernality that needs to be in centers these days that would be a huge turnoff for me. So I'll just leave it at that because I know you guys have a lot of answers. But if you have a website from 2005, like if it's vertical, it doesn't cover my whole screen. Like that's a big problem. It's
built in a frame.
Yeah, I'll pass.
What about?
I was going to say, I think all of our answers are going to be very similar.
Yeah, right. I was going to say that too.
You go next, Caroline.
Oh my goodness, there's so much. What do you look for? I agree with Nick. Honestly, I feel like if your website is outdated I know, Justina, you don't want to see any rainbow hands. We actually do like rainbow hands occasionally.
Wait, what does that mean?
I have a thing about kids with paint on their hands, or
and then they put it in a picture or something like that,
or just like I just think
some of them are so cute though.
Yes, but there are so many more better, impactful pictures you could use instead of a picture of kids with paint on their hands.
Like it's cliche. That's
yes.
Oh, okay.
But
sorry.
Okay, all right.
I was like, what is this what?
Back to online presence. So what I look for, a blog. I want to know that you're blogging and your blog is active. It's, you posted one last month. What we ask is that you post a new blog once a month. And if I see that a center is doing that, that tells me that they're, staying on top of their craft because they're looking for new things to blog about, things to tell parents, things to share. It means they're innovative, that they're progressive, and they're forward thinking. So for me, if I were a parent right now looking at a childcare center, I'd look for that.
Go ahead.
If you could see Justina's face right now, she just wants to divulge this very badly.
Okay, so I may or may not be a little particular about these kind of things. If you're watching Caroline's faces at all.
Rainbow hands. I'm just kidding.
Number one.
Oh.
Yes, I'm a font snob. Number one, I want to see that they have a website.
That
they even have a website.
That's a really good point.
True.
I hate that, where you just go online, on Google, and
it's just a Facebook page from 5 years ago that's not updated,
or just it's like call and then the blank one, because everyone has a website. Let's be honest, and then it's like, ugh.
So they better have a website. They better be on social media. and at least active. Like, I know there's centers that have very clear policies about putting pictures of kids on social media. Fine. There's a multitude of other things that you can do. I don't know that if they had a picture of a kids with paint on their hands, if I would say I wouldn't do it, but I would be like, really?
Come on.
I don't know if I can go into fonts because I think that that's just being really picky.
I'm going to say this. If your site is written in Comic Sans font, Justina would never go into your childcare center.
No, but I may contact you and ask if you need a new website. You're right. I mean, would that be a deal breaker? Maybe. But I would venture to guess the majority of centers that are reaching to the millennial crowd would not use those.
I have another. Can I say one more thing before you go, Maddie?
I'll go check the camera real quick.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right. So this is really important, is if I need to be able to know how to contact you instantly. Is there a form I need to fill out? I just need to know how to get in touch with you the quickest way possible. Otherwise, I'm going to get frustrated and I'm going to just disappear from your website.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
I want to know that your center's hours. I don't know how.
Oh my goodness.
And I feel like this might be picking apart everything that we struggle with online, and we're kind of gearing towards websites, but I can't tell you how many websites I've gone on, and I cannot find their center hours anywhere. I think that maybe people assume that the consumer knows, but we come from a center that was 6 to 6, and when I was there, I just assumed everyone was open 6 to 6. So when I hear people have different hours, I'm like, wait, what? So
that's a good point.
Your hours should be on there too, and should be easily read.
Right.
My point is, if your website, it's two things I'm focusing more so on the website. If your website is difficult to navigate, I will stop where I am. If I can't get to 2 clicks of where I'm trying to look for the specific information that I want, I will stop. I'll just go to the next daycare. And then the other aspect of that is this is going to sound so like I'm a hermit. I don't want to call you for more information. Does that make sense?
No, that's typical of your generation, right?
I want to know everything that I can get before, because I feel like it goes back to the whole sales thing. If I call, people are going to assume all right, the next step, you're ready for the next step. I'm like, no, I just wanted some information, just a little bit. So I want it all on the website easily for me to understand. So that way I'm I can narrow it down to the 3 places that I would want to go to. And then I can do the calls.
I would love if I could schedule a tour on their website, and then I don't even have to talk to them until I go there for the tour. Mm-hmm. That would be ideal for me.
So I think
I just feel like that's very typical. It's you don't want to talk to anybody. You just want to get the information.
But sometimes you don't have that time. If I'm sometimes a lot of the times in between my jobs, I'll be doing the other job. So I might not have time to be on the phone for 20 minutes or
getting a sales pitch about enrolling.
Yeah, getting a sales pitch. I'm if I can just pull it up right here and just look, I'm okay, that's fine.
Mobile friendly websites as well. Not every website
doesn't have a mobile friendly website.
The amount of times that I'd have to go in and click desktop mode on my phone when I'm on my browser is unreal sometimes.
So I think now, Justina, when we design websites for childcare centers, we need to make sure Nick and Maddie do a review.
The site navigation. I feel what I'm gathering from it for this is the website is more important than anything almost. So that if their website isn't up to snuff, you're not going to even look secondary to Facebook or Instagram or wherever else they may be.
I think that's really a good assumption, because I think your website kind of says, are you up to date? Do I even want to walk into your building? Mm-hmm. I think my husband always says something if your website is basically, imagine pulling up in front of your childcare center and looking at the building and saying, do I want to walk in? In essence, the website is that virtually.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. So if you're listening to this, take a step back and pull up your website and take these perspectives and into consideration when you're looking at your website for sure.
And I feel like this is harsh to say, but you do need a young person's perspective, I think, for certain things, because like my generation are the new families that are coming up. And unfortunately, I expect certain things. And I'm sorry, but it's like and you know, I don't want to argue. I mean, I think Justina is way more knowledgeable than me about just the whole website design, and you have a real, I mean, and you're very young still too, and you really tap in well to, I think, what a new parent would want to look at. But you know, I don't think everyone has that skill set. You know, I don't think every childcare center. Right. I think actually maybe even talking to your current families might be a good way to get a perspective on what, you know, you want your website to look like.
So, kind of segueing into the next question that we have that I was looking on our stuff. We were talking about the difference between your social media and your website. Does someone want to just read the next question before I go ahead?
I can read it. Would reading a bad review or hearing someone say something negative about a center deter you from touring or enrolling at a center, and why?
Okay, so this is it's not really answering the question, but for reviews, I look for reviews on social media. I don't look for reviews on your webpage.
So true.
I'm going to be honest. This is going to sound harsh. I don't care. Because you handpicked them.
Sure.
Let's be honest.
Exactly.
You picked that one that looked best. I want those raw things from other people. Real people. Of course, real people probably made your reviews on your webpage. But there's just something different about it when you're on social media. You know?
They can't be filtered.
Yeah.
It's on there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You just blew my mind.
Really?
Yes. So let me ask you this. Should people put a testimonial page on the website? Is that something you even care about?
No.
Mm-mm.
Even if it has videos?
No, because there are places to go. I can find out this information somewhere else on your website. And I like she just said, I think I trust social media reviews way more than I would a website.
Because you can't post someone's own post. You get what I'm saying?
True.
I'm just thinking specifically on Facebook, you see each person, you could be anonymous, but there was someone else that did that, you know? Versus you design your own webpage, so there's more control to it.
Google reviews, even if you just Google, I mean, there's some really very real reviews on Google for certain childcare centers, and obviously, I think you can't take every. And I guess I'm kind of going into my answer a little bit, but if it's someone I trust that gives me a bad review of a childcare, I'm going to believe them. Now, if you have 25 5-star reviews and 2 1-star reviews, I'm probably going to take the 1-star reviews with a grain of salt.
Right.
But, you have, at least I think of it when I buy an Amazon product and I go down the reviews, I tend to look at more of the middle ground reviews that tend to give, here are the good things and the bad things. And that, and I think that can be the same for a lot of childcare facilities as well. Is, I want to get both perspectives. I want to know where they're struggling and where they're succeeding at.
So let me ask you this. Okay, so there's been times in the past when we were running our center that we've gotten some bad reviews. Everyone gets them.
Everyone does.
And I'll be honest, it wasn't because of anything that we did. Okay, not all of them, but one specifically I'm talking about was a really bad review. And as a management team, we formulated a response.
You don't have to say specifically, but what do you mean out of your control? Hours or something, or?
No, just their mental state and their perception of whatever.
Okay.
So they just kind of went off.
Oh, so they just had for some reason someone crashed into their car and it happened to be when they were driving to drop their kid off and now they're just angry or whatever?
Yeah, they might have had a bad morning. Yeah. She just, whatever.
You can tell when you read reviews.
Right. So you can tell when they're kind of, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, right? Our producers.
Just keep going.
I'm going to keep going because I'm not making sense yet. Okay. So a review happens. You don't like the review. Your staff wasn't really the reason behind the review. You formulate a response as a leadership team that responds to that review. Mm-hmm. So you say, we're sorry you feel this way. here's what we do in our center to make sure things like that don't happen. How do you view that type of management response to a negative review? Does that kind of
I think you need to have it.
Okay.
If you don't have that, that goes back to that you're not really involved in your like social media and websites. Like, yeah, even if it's like a little bit vague, at least they responded. And they, like, I've seen a lot of like restaurants do that where they will reference like their name, say what the issue was, and we're like, please, you know, I would love to talk to you one-on-one about this so it doesn't happen again. You know, like, I want to see that effort.
Vague, but also if I see the same cookie cutter response for every mediocre review, then I'm going to know that something's wrong. So you said you formulated a response. I think that's what you need to, specific. That's what you need to do. I think you need to be specific. I also think that you need to be prepared for someone to call you and be like, I read this review online. Can you explain to me why this happened this way? Because frankly, let's say I found a center and I liked everything, but there were a few reviews that talked about cleanliness. You know, if I go to a center and I'm like, listen, I read some reviews that were about your cleanliness. You know, can you address that to me? I think as a director or a teacher or whatever, you need to be prepared to answer that kind of stuff.
That's good.
So for me, if I'm going to buy a product, I'm going to always look at the bad reviews first, or the less than stellar ones. So I want to know what is it, how bad is it, and do I think they're complaining just to complain, or do I think this is a valid response? So that's what I would do. And I think going off of, so would it deter me? No, not necessarily, depending upon what the circumstances in the review. Like, what does it say and how valid do I think it is? You know, because I come from a childcare background, I can understand how things get, maybe the perception is different than what happened. Okay. But essentially, we're talking about reputation management.
Right.
And you need to make sure that you're always on top of your reputation online and, you know, in person or whatever you want to say. And talking about the review that you're referencing, Caroline. Well, yes, they weren't valid in their review. I think this is really interesting point. Like, that's still their perspective.
Right.
So whether or not that's actually what happened doesn't really matter. It's how they perceived it. So how do you navigate acknowledging where they're at, but still not basically saying you're wrong?
And it's hard because as me, I don't know that person's perspective was wrong.
Right.
So if you don't respond to that, I'm going to assume that person's got their head scrambled right. And I'm going to think that what they're saying is appropriate. So that's,
And, you know, I have had the situation where a family is touring and they've mentioned a bad review.
Right.
And in this particular sense, they're like, well, I could tell that they were just kind of mad. So I think as consumers, people are very knowledgeable about playing detective, so to speak, if you want to say, well, I'm going to read this and think about it. And do I think it's valid, or do I think they're just mad? And I think consumers are pretty knowledgeable, but if it's something that's consistently, like Nick said, consistently brought up, then I'm going to say, okay, this is clearly a problem.
Right. And I think that was going to be my answer, in the sense that I'm only going to really take into consideration negative reviews when I see them multiple bad reviews in a very short period of time. Because I think that it becomes a trend, right? And that's what I'm looking for. So like if the same teacher's being called out, or the same classroom, or the same issues being as a constant theme in the reviews, then I'm probably going to kind of walk over that childcare center and go to the next one.
And even long term too. You know, like anything can happen in a short period of time. You might completely change the mind. Like if it was a dirty center and now you shaped up your policies, like I even look at the long-term ones. Like if it was from the beginning and then someone mentioned one again, just those two, I might be a little bit like my red flag meter is going to go up a little bit.
Going off that though, if there is maybe 2 or 3 bad reviews from like 5 years ago, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I probably would still go tour and say, and just kind of gauge my judgment off of that, because in childcare, 5 years ago is like a lifetime.
Right.
You know?
And management changes, director changes. Yeah. So 5 years ago is really a long time.
Right. But if that's the only review they have, then I might be a little bit more concerned, because clearly they're not concerned about their reputation online.
What about no reviews?
See,
We see that. I'm going to be honest, I hate it. I want a review.
I want
see
reviews.
something.
Even if it's bad, I would rather someone say something about the center than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you want to have reviews as a childcare center, because as a consumer, you're looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people give reviews all over the place. So why would they not be reviewing your childcare center?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a consumer. I'm not dumb. I know that if I talk to people who work there, they're going to want me to enroll. I need to hear from a peer who isn't trying to sell me through like a referral program or whatever, that they actually believe that this center is worth my time.
Right. I know I don't go to dinner anymore to a new place unless I read reviews. I'm just going to be real. Dinner and childcare are very different things, but
I feel like they correspond. Like if you look at reviews for a product on any sort of online site or anywhere else,
mm-hmm.
and you take those into consideration, you need to do the same thing for childcare.
Agreed. All right, let's move on. Best piece of advice you got as a teacher for a classroom?
Is it like as a teacher working in a classroom?
Mm-hmm.
Probably is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I have one. Make relationships with your coworkers or your teachers, because they are the ones that'll be rooting for you. I mean, of course you want everyone to, but if you are really close with another teacher, like they will give you, like, it's friendship, you know? Like if you're struggling, they're not going to want to see your, a friend do poorly, and like they will give you those insights. They will cover your back when something does go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a pretty real answer. I think the best piece of advice I got the first 2 months that I was working at a center was the hardest part about working in a childcare center is not the students, but the parents. And that's
parents.
your relationship with the parent. So to be transparent, I was one of 3 males that worked at our center. And I think I was the only one that worked with younger kids semi-consistently. And I know that there was, when I first started working there, initially, someone had actually went and talked to the director and said something about me being there. And that can be a little disheartening, but the point of that is I think that after working there for 2 years, I was able to build a repertoire with the families there where I became a trusted face in the center, especially for the younger ones. And I think that as a teacher, especially as a new teacher, and as a parent, now I see it, you need to prove yourself to me because, and you said this Justina said this a couple podcasts ago, you are giving the most important thing in your life to somebody else and you're saying, here, take care of this for me. That is an immense responsibility. And I don't think you can ever assume that a parent is going to trust you just off of, your initial meetings with them. You need to make them trust you. You need to help them to grow. And I think, you just mentioned, you need to become friends with them as well, because you need to be transparent. It can't just be professional, and they need to know that you're a real person. At least I feel like that now as a parent. I need to know you're not a robot. I need to know that you love, and I think the reason that, Maddie, what you said, that why employees get along so well is because I think that childcare is a passion project at its heart. I don't think anyone goes into childcare for the money. I'm just being real again. I don't know anyone who's a millionaire and a teacher. I don't think there's a single person unless you're a college professor. So I think that the bonds that you can build internally are strong because you're all there for the same purpose.
Right. So I wasn't a teacher in a classroom, but I have given advice to teachers. And I think one piece of advice that I don't take lightly is you have to love what you're doing. And so kind of piggybacking off of what Nick said, you don't get paid a lot. And childcare is very stressful. You work long hours and, you're in that same space day after day after day. And if you do not love what you're doing, it's going to come across in your relationships that you're trying to build and how you play with the kids, how you educate. And so I would want them to do a lot of self-reflection, often. You have to ask yourself, do I still love what I'm doing? Am I still passionate about what I'm doing? So my advice to teachers would be, to make sure that you're setting timers where you consistently ask yourself that question.
Can I also add on to that too? Because I think a lot of people might assume, like, if it's the cutoff of, oh, I'm not loving what I'm doing, maybe just reevaluating what made you love what you did. Because so many people could be like, there are all the negatives and I'm like just burnt out and I'm done. Maybe just start like seeing, okay, well, which path is it? Is it the path of I shouldn't be doing this anymore? Or, man, like, there are other stressors on me right now that's making me feel like that, but it really isn't that.
Right. Or maybe you just need to do a minor adjustment. Yeah. Maybe you need to move in a new classroom because you've been in that same classroom for 3 years, working with the same co-teacher. Because it could simply be a minor shift that you have to do.
I don't know that I remember a very clear piece of advice, but one of the things that was most impactful for me was having a co-teacher that had been in the industry longer than I was and could teach me things that I didn't know. Just to have them like be like a mentor figure, and I can just like be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or I want to do this, and have them be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Or no, don't do that. Just to have someone that you can go to ask questions. That's a safe person, and they're gonna be real with you and be honest.
Right.
All right. Next question.
Well, I really feel like Maddie gave like the perfect segue into the next question.
I know.
Maddie, I'll read this one.
Well, okay. Well, sure.
Navigating roles in a classroom, question mark. I think that's how do you navigate roles in a classroom, I assume.
Right, I think Maddie brought this one up.
Yeah, of course, this was when I was teaching high school, which it still can be adapted to little kids. It was so difficult for me, especially being new, how to work with another person. And it sounds weird. And I remember when we were making this question, I couldn't formulate like a way to even ask it, but it was difficult. Like I didn't know, who should be doing what, or how do we solve certain situations, or even just like, now it was breaking down like the lessons. Like it was just hard just having that second brain. And we didn't know how to use each other perfectly. And like, that was my question. Cause I didn't know. And even like the leadership that I got, it wasn't like, it was a very common thing there that you would have another like co-teacher, but still people were trying to figure it out. And I was like lost. And I felt like that really affected my teaching.
I'm really excited that you brought this up because I think this is something that trainers and leaders in childcare don't necessarily take into consideration in their onboarding and their training programs. We talk about team building and collaboration and stuff, but what you're saying is something completely different. It's your co-teachers in a classroom. How do you define accountability and who's responsible for what? And how do you teach the two to work together? And I think, if I did not do that as a leader in our childcare center. And I think this is a really good insight and perspective for our audience to take into consideration. When you have a new co-teacher starting, are you teaching those two co-teachers on how to work and navigate that relationship? And I think that's really important.
And really utilizing each other's skills.
Right.
Because sometimes not everyone's the perfect, wholesome, well-rounded circle,
Right.
Some people have more strengths. And it was like, I knew that they had it. I just didn't know like what to do afterward.
That's good.
I think this goes perfectly with what I said earlier is having that perfect person that you work together. It's really difficult to find because of that exact reason. You don't know how to navigate who's going to do what, who's responsible for what, who's in charge of paperwork, who, like this, that, and the other thing. There's so many other things you have to worry about. Right. And if you can't communicate effectively to do that, you're never going to be able to navigate that. And so I think, having maybe when they first, like a new teacher first starts and they're going to go in this classroom with this teacher, having time scheduled for out of the classroom time for both those teachers, maybe in that first week would be super impactful. Like what Caroline said, to have the conversation, maybe the current teacher does the paperwork because their old current teacher wasn't great at it, but doesn't like doing it. And the new person would love it. Like, wouldn't that be so good to know?
Right.
Because that can be a big stressor for someone. So I think if you have the ability to do that, that would be super helpful because it's awkward.
It is. And then as a floater, I would imagine.
Well, yeah. So for the first year I worked in childcare, I was a floater. And so probably one of the most interesting things, I mean, I talked originally just earlier about how when I would go into your room, I felt like I was a guest in your room. And in some ways it was almost like, in some ways it's like your child. It's like, I want to follow your rules so that I can help them follow your rules. And I can tell you that the best thing that you did that I think every director needs to make sure that they're instilling into their teachers is that you filled me in on everything right when I walked in. And I felt like I was in the same mindset as you when I got there, is that and of course I'm the kind of person who's always just like, what do you need me to do? What can I do? I don't like to make assumptions. And maybe that means I don't take action all the time, but I like to.
As he looks at his mom.
I like to know what the task list is and then go for it. So in terms of navigating roles as a floater, I think in some ways you need to learn to be, and I don't know another way to say it, but subservient in the way that, you're here to make sure the lead teacher accomplishes what her task list is for the day. And that accounts for even when you leave, because you did leave eventually. And I was just there either alone or with, another co-teacher or another floater. I need to still make sure that Justina's goals for that day are getting accomplished. And especially when we were doing things like the STAR program, Young Star, there are things that would have to be done even post, where floors would have to help with that because there was no one else to help. And then one more thing I just wanted to touch on is I did spend at the end of my time there as a co-teacher. And I think one of the things as a co-teacher is, the lead teacher, obviously, I think in a lot of situations takes the reins on the lesson planning. I think that's really common for most classrooms, just from what I've experienced at our center and talking to a lot of other teachers. I do think that as a co-teacher, you need to be able to not be afraid to voice your concerns or voice even your encouragement and voice how you feel, because you're there to offer a different perspective than what the lead teacher has. And in terms of navigating roles, like the actual question, your role matters. And I think you need to find worth as a co-teacher that you offer as much as a lead teacher does. Right. And it can't just be an echo chamber of one person coming up with ideas and then you realizing halfway through, like a semester that, oh, this isn't working. And if I would have had a different perspective, maybe it wouldn't have been like that.
So I think we all agree that communication is critical.
Yes.
Planning, training, that kind of thing, setting accountability and setting roles for sure. Resources in the classroom. Have you ever felt like you couldn't ask for specific resources? Because this is, when we survey teachers, a lot of times one of their biggest complaint is that they don't have enough resources. They're not given enough resources. Money's being used elsewhere and they're not getting paid attention to. Did you ever feel that way in your role? Like you didn't get what you needed in order to do what you needed to do?
Justine?
I feel like that's a hard no. I didn't ever feel that way, but a lot of times I just went and bought the stuff myself. Not because I knew they wouldn't have bought it, but typically, like, if I need it right now. I can't wait 3 weeks. And I think when I was a teacher, I was really good about planning ahead so I could plan for things. And if it was something that was super expensive, I would always ask for it. I would go see if we found it. But if it was something minor, I would just go buy it myself. Which, when I came into leadership, we always said, don't do it. We'll buy it for you. Because we want to, yes, there's a budget for that. Yes, we have money for that. So yeah, there may be some times that if I would have asked for, I would have gotten it, but I just didn't want to deal with it.
Right.
So it's not that I didn't know what was there. I just didn't want to deal with going and asking.
I always felt like it was a hassle to ask for certain resources. Now you have the big things that you need, but kind of just going off what you said, Justina, that it might take 3 weeks. Oh, my phone, Zach. It was, I just felt like sometimes it'd be 20 questions. Not being why do you need this? It was just there'd always be like this long form, and I was like, do this, 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 and this. And it's just like, I feel like you can trust me. And like, if you were to be like, oh, just tell me like, what is it for? And then it maybe like, just that one simple question is enough, because then maybe they could say something like, oh, like we actually have that. It's somewhere like over here, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so like, it just felt like it was all like, it just was a hassle where I'm like, okay, like why are you not trusting that I went out and reached out and said I needed something for my classroom? I'm just going to do it myself.
So it's just easier to do it yourself.
Yeah, it's just easier.
I think that if, our experience is limited to our center, I think that not every center is as I think we were pretty privileged with getting materials. I do think that if you're in a center and if you're an owner, I think that you probably understand that, like, if someone's asking you for something and they need it today, that doesn't always work. Like, you need to have understanding as a teacher that, like, if I'm asking for something, I need it tomorrow and I know we don't have it in the center. I mean, are you going to Michael's to go get it? Like, is the director going to go? Like, this, it doesn't always work that way. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, always comes back to like that executive director kind of perspective. Like, tell me in advance. Mm-hmm. We'll have the money if you just tell me in advance. Like, these are the projects I'm going to do this month. Here's my supply list. But again, that's on me. Like, I need to be able to put a format together for my team so they know how to communicate, how to give me the supplies they need. That list.
Piggybacking off of that, though, playing devil's advocate, though, I'm going to be honest. I'm a procrastinator, and I think a lot of people are procrastinators, even though they say they aren't. But what about those last-minute things? Things change all the time. So then what's the next step, though, if you really needed those resources?
I think you're rolling the dice.
Well, you are rolling the dice because all you're going to have then is what's in the resource space, right? Mm-hmm. So when we order supplies, you're going to order kind of in bulk, but, so there'll be stuff. So if you're a procrastinator, you're unfortunately going to have to maybe modify some of the things that you're doing in your classroom.
I just want to kind of shift gears on the center we were at. We always encourage the teachers to cook with the kids. So food is generally, number one, you can't buy it that far in advance because depending upon what it is, it's going to spoil or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I know part of my responsibilities towards the end before I left was I had to do the shopping. So I would ask the teachers, they had to tell me the week before what they needed for the next week because I would go shopping and get it. And then more often than not, I was like, that's a really great idea. Maybe we could have the whole center make that. So then you can buy a larger quantity, thus making it more cost effective. And then I would tell all the teachers, hey, we got these supplies. It's here. You can go make this with your kids during the week. So
communication.
I want to get your perspective on something. So let's say I'm in a center, because the one that I think we talked about recently had this problem. Let's say my center has no extra money for resources. Mm-hmm. Now, this specific center that I'm thinking of, one of the teachers took it upon themselves to actually talk to parents and be like, hey, I really want our children to be able to have this thing. Maybe like accepting donations of either used versions that are clean or even like monetary donations. Do you feel like that's appropriate if a center is in dire need of a specific item or something that would really benefit their students? On like a smaller scale? Well,
I think there's no harm in, like, let's say you plan a project and you're going to need toilet paper rolls or, whatever. Your teachers used to bring that home for me. So if you say, in 2 weeks, our classroom is going to be doing this specific project and we're looking for families to bring in tissue paper or whatever to contribute to that project, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But it's how you ask it. That's the key part. And you don't want to come across like our center can't afford, that shouldn't be it. It should be, we want to engage the parents to help us, maybe with recyclable stuff that they have around their house.
And it's not like you're asking them for something that's $100. I would venture to guess you wouldn't ask a family for something that's super expensive. Like, we want this thing and it's $100, as opposed to, hey, we're doing this cooking project and everyone wants to contribute because it's a friendship theme. And so everyone's going to bring their own food or their own
ingredient.
I just always think that someone made a friendship fruit salad. And so they had on the door of the classroom, they had all the different fruit and then parents just sign up for what they wanted to bring. And I think parents are willing to do that because they want to be a part, and it's engaging them and it's being able to have that conversation.
Right.
So I think
that's creative.
It's one thing if you're asking them for a huge donation as opposed to, hey, can you bring in some apples? Or, hey, do you have any toilet paper rolls
right.
or
tissue,
old Kleenex boxes or whatever?
Noodles.
Any old stale noodles, or we want to do a project with them. I think that's a very different ask than something like, hey, we need a new rug on our floor, right. and those are like $400.
We want $5 from everyone. Yeah,
right.
Probably not. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to segue on the noodles, just to sidetrack for a minute. Do you know that, Nick, I have from your kindergarten experience, your K-4 experience? Oh, every week you guys did a letter of the alphabet in like different materials, like marshmallows and noodles, and I saved every letter of the alphabet in a Tupperware bin.
Do you still have them?
I still have it.
Really?
Has the food like cracked?
I don't know. We need to open it up and like check it out.
Yeah. That's really funny.
All right, that was a little sidebar there.
What's our next question?
All right, next question. Whew.
You clearly, Nick, didn't want to talk about his letter art.
Yeah, my noodle art. I'm a very good gluer.
Were you a good noodle?
Goals.
All right. What is the breaking point? We have 2 more questions, so we'll let our audience know that. What is the breaking point, and how do you get out of it in terms of mental wellness? Like, were you at that point where you're just like, I can't take any more in my classroom. I can't take any more in my position. I need to like beeline it for the door and take a quick mental break.
I want to hear your answer to this, Justina, because I feel like you, out of everyone here, worked the most in a classroom, obviously, and have had those kind of issues.
So, for me, when I started, backstory, I started at our center literally the week it opened its doors for the very first time. So when I started, there was like 7 kids. I mean, that's not accurate, but there was very little. So my role in a classroom, quote unquote, didn't get solidified for a few months. So I kind of just wandered for a while. So once I got into a classroom, I knew that come summertime, I was going to be the camp teacher. So I was very lucky for the first couple of years where I got a break. So for me, it was really nice that I kind of got a break halfway through. And
because you segued from being a toddler teacher to a camp teacher.
Correct. So for me, I think I didn't even hit that break ever in a classroom where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I mean, there was a period of time where I didn't have the greatest co-teacher and it kind of was bad, but that didn't even hit my breaking point. It wasn't until I was in leadership that I hit that.
Yeah.
Often. No, not really.
It was often.
No, because if anyone has transferred from a teacher role to leadership, number one, it's very difficult because everyone that was your friend is now not your friend anymore. At least in my situation at the center that we were at, these bonds that you had in this, someone couldn't just come to me and vent about something because now I was in leadership and I was in management and then I maybe would have had to take a course of action as opposed to I'm just here to listen to you. For me, my breaking point was literally right before I left. And it was a period of months and months and months and months and months, maybe even year, that I just I couldn't do it anymore. And I don't know that there would have been anything that could have happened for me to not leave. So my breaking point was, and how I left is I quit my job because there was no other option.
Right.
Like I couldn't do what I was doing anymore because it was affecting my entire life.
It's a mature decision to make that decision too, because I think some people are too afraid to make that jump. Yeah.
Especially not having.
Right.
There was no alternate plan. Like there wasn't a job.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anymore. And thankfully my husband was like, you need to just quit. And so that's what I did. And I don't know that that's true for everyone in their experiences. And I would hope that people don't get put into a situation because it's not a fun one to be in. But that's what I hit it. And I was there for a really long time. And it was my fear, like Nick said, to not leave. That's why I was like, no, I can't do that.
Right.
And although I was not happy, I was comfortable because it's what I had known for almost 10 years. So I think for me, I don't know what the final straw was, but I was just like, I can't do it. I have to quit.
Right.
So I know that's not really a good answer, but that's not what I would like to say to people. Like, I would like to say it was this and this is what I did, but for me, it had gone on for too long that there was no coming back.
Well, your story is showing you have to make hard decisions sometimes. That's the reality of what you, not every one of our, I don't know what everyone else is going to say, but like not every one of our answers is going to be, well, I'll just pick myself up and I'm okay now. Like it's not that easy. That's
right.
You can't romanticize childcare. Like it's a hard job like that. Like, well, I might as well just answer. I mean, like I was a high school student that came in with no experience, and kind of just took it because it was a job and realized 6 months in that I was like, I don't know what I got myself into. Because it's like you fall in love with the job, but you also realize that it's like taking more. It was the biggest job I had up until that point, and I realized it was taking more out of me than anything else I'd ever done my whole life. And that's being serious. Like I between school and all this other stuff from college, that job drained me emotionally more than anything else I'd ever done. And like I said, you can't romanticize the fact that it can be that hard sometimes. And it's not easy to just think, oh, it's okay. Sometimes you have to understand that there are causes and effects. And I think what got me out of it was realizing that there's more of a purpose to what you're doing than just how you feel. I think one of the best things about childcare is that there is, and maybe this is romanticizing, but there is a greater purpose to what you're doing other than yourself. There are children who are the next generation who are benefiting from you putting in this amount of effort. Because like I said, it's not about the money. You're not making money. I wasn't making a ton of money doing this. I was doing it because I love doing it.
You're doing it for the fame.
Yeah, the recognition.
So piggybacking off that, because I'm going to be a little bit more devil's advocate, I think it is difficult just to see even that, that there's a greater purpose as to what you're doing. I think, honestly, the breaking point is that when you feel like you're alone, that even though that you're surrounded by everyone, you're utterly alone and you can't do it with another person. You just have to do it yourself, and that's what you have that mindset, and as soon as like I kind of got into that mindset and like just teaching, it just was like every single day was just a meh. Like, all right, I got to do what I got to do, like I hear like, children of the future and everything. And I respected that and I understood that, but I just couldn't get to that type of mindset again. And it just kind of broke me down. And I just was like, enough's enough. I can't anymore.
It's where a relationship with a co-teacher is so important because you need someone that you can rely on. Now, obviously, not every classroom has that, but you need someone that you can rely on, even if it's a teacher across the hall from you. I mean, you need to have a relationship with someone that you can open up to. And I think it needs to be someone who's in childcare because anyone else isn't going to understand. They're not going to have the same perspective. I remember trying to talk to my friends who are just a bunch of teenage dudes about like struggles, with parents or whatever. And they just totally over their heads. Like they just didn't get it, which it's not their fault. They're just not involved in the industry,
I really want to just like emphasize that point that it is someone on the same level as you. To be honest, it could like all respect to executive directors, but like if you have that close relationship with someone who's at the same exact job level as you and they can really just like help you get out of that rut, like that's a little bit more different than like an executive director coming to you. Like it's it needs peer. To be a peer. It needs to be. And as much as we really want it to be the main person who's in charge, I think it has to be that.
But as an executive director, you have to create that environment to where people feel like they want to be your peer, where you are building relationships among your staff. And so my situation was when a couple people in leadership came to me, you had mentioned, Nick, about giving. It's a hard job. Well, when you're a director or an assistant director and you're working in childcare and you're giving your staff every part of you, and then you feel like they're taking advantage of you, that's what I have found in like my leadership, like what their breaking point is like when they have they go in the classroom for you, they give you breaks, they fit your schedules, they do whatever they can for you. And then you walk all over them. And that's usually when your leadership has a breaking point. And, and as their manager, that's hard to navigate because you can't really make them feel better. That's a really tough situation. So, the only thing you can do is try to pump them up as leaders and say, I believe in you and I'm here to support you. But it's hard when you're giving everything and everything. And you feel like no one cares.
And I guess now I was thinking about it, I didn't really answer the question. My breaking point happened because I wasn't getting that from the executive director or the leadership above me. Because I didn't have that
Which
person.
was not you.
Was not Caroline. I didn't have that person coming in and being my cheerleader and saying I'm here for you and that sort of thing. It was, I didn't have that situation within the leadership team that was there and then above them.
Wonderful.
Last question?
Last question.
Drum roll.
This is a tough one.
Oh, let me read it.
This was my idea, and I thought that this is a really uncomfortable topic, and that's why we should definitely talk about it, and that's why I wrote it down.
This is tricky. We're like an hour and a half in. Okay, let's go.
Is money your deciding factor on where you work?
Who wants to answer first?
We're all looking at each other.
I can say yes. Every time I have been in an interview with my last employer, before this job, I straight up told them that part of the reason I like this job is because it paid a lot. Now my perspective was a little different because I knew I had a family on the way and I knew that, my wife actually does not work. So my job was a lot more important than it would be in a normal household. And so I think that liking the job for me was a bonus, but the fact that I wanted to earn money. Now, sideways to that, I was very open multiple times here now that when I was working in childcare, I don't think, unless you're in leadership or you work in college, I would be hard pressed to think of someone who is a teacher in early education and is in there to make the big bucks. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
But it's not just about big bucks. It says, is money your deciding factor?
Well, that's the point, is someone going into early education because they want to make that amount of money, though? Is it because I don't think anyone is?
But you're doing recruiting now for a couple of our clients. So what are you hearing out there from these people when you're talking to them?
Not a single person that I've interviewed has asked me what the pay is.
Interesting.
But that's, I feel like, something that we don't do. I wouldn't ask that in a job interview.
I would.
But do you get what I'm saying, though? An immediate job interview, I always feel like it has a follow-up to, and that's when I would.
I always look.
You didn't sign the paper saying, yeah, I took this job. You didn't get the job. So I'll say maybe later on, I'd ask about.
Are you saying you would ask about the pay after you got the job?
No, I think there's the in-between before you get the job. Right. There's the interview. There's the middle where I feel like they can be you can back out at any time. And then you get the job.
See, I wouldn't even waste my time going in for an interview if I knew I wasn't going to get paid a certain amount. There have been jobs I thought were really cool, and then they told me I was making X amount of money. I was like, well, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go do that interview.
What about you?
So I feel like we should all answer this, and I have a follow-up question off of this question. Okay. For me, is money deciding factor? No. Hands on, no. If I am going to be in love with what I do every day, I don't care.
I think the hard part about this question is that all of our lifestyles are very different. I think I actually know for a fact that all of our lifestyles are very different. And I think that people who are listening to this, we don't know what people's personal lives are. Money might need to be the deciding factor. They may not even care what the job is. They may just need money. I think that if you're at a position where money isn't a deciding factor, then you are a very lucky person.
Right.
So I think you, if you really truly feel the way that you just said you feel, I think you are very lucky to feel that way, because I don't feel that way.
I feel like a better, and not to cut you off from your answer, but a better question is if it's between two childcare centers that you're going into, is money deciding factor? If there's $1 or $2 an hour for argument's sake difference, not I'm not talking a quarter difference, because I would venture to guess people would say no. But if it's versus making X amount or $2 more, is that going to deter you from taking the job that's maybe paying less, but you feel like it would be a better fit for you.
Right. And this is really good for our listeners because right now what we're finding is that applicants or employees are leaving to either go work at the grocery store or, and make $18 an hour. Or they're going to the center down the street for an hour or for $1 more. And so personally, would I make a switch? Like if I were to put myself in a teacher's shoes and it was a $1 difference and I loved the people I was going to work with and I loved the experience that I felt, I'd probably stay there because I would know that personally I'd be able to work my way up. Like I would shine.
Are you talking about a center you already work at and then leaving to go work at a different? Well, yeah, I think there's also job security too. I mean, if I know that I have a place here, that's going to make me want to stay.
Right.
So does that change anyone's answer if they know if you're going into a job at a child care center and it's a difference of $1 or $2 more, or even higher? I mean, unless it's like $10 more, I feel like that might be a little bit more of a deciding factor. But if it's $5 or under difference, let's say that.
I think $3 is a lot. Like if you made $3 more an hour, that's a lot of money.
$100 extra. I don't know. I think it, like I said, I think it comes down to people's lifestyles. Because if it was a $3 difference, I would go to the other center because that's a lot of extra money. What about you?
I'm more wishy-washy with that answer because, to be honest, money really is a big deciding factor. And I get that like a lot of directors, owners are always like frantic because you may not be able to increase your salaries. But I think the big thing though is that if I can see the culture being very positive and seeing that I can go up in the job position, that might have a bigger impact to my decision, I would say.
I love what you just said. And I guess I just kind of want to reiterate that. There are people that know their worth more. But if they know your company has a plan for them for the future, you're willing to kind of like push that off aside for right now, knowing that you've got my back. And I think that's a really important thing. Like, how do you communicate that during the interview process, during the coaching times that you have with these people, say,
sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, just to say, hey, this is kind of where you're starting, but this is where you could go.
You just convinced me to work at your center.
Thank you.
Well, and not to cut you off, Maddie, but what I would always say is, they always see like the grass is always greener on the other side. I would always say, no, it's not. It's just a different shade of green. And so, well, someone may be able to paint a pretty picture. It doesn't mean it's going to always be better, even for $1 or $2. So my answer would not change. It would not be a deciding factor for me.
Mine's not really a new comment. It just was adding on to the idea that, I forgot my thing. That you're not hiring me just to fill the position.
Right.
Like if there's a hiring crisis, and they need someone, not that you're just having someone to fill the position and that's it. I want it to see that there's something else to it.
I can tell you that it is very rare for an employer to talk to an employee the way that you just mentioned. Outside of childcare and inside of childcare, I agree with you that I think that if someone were to come to me and be like, hey, listen, there's a purpose, there's more to you being here than, there's a ladder for you to climb. There's a goal for you to hit, in 3 years. And maybe that's a question you need to ask where someone else's goals are, which we actually do in our recruitment thing, is we want to know where people see themselves. And that's a really cliche thing, but professionally, you need to know where someone wants to be.
Well, so one of the trainings that I've done is in terms of if I'm interviewing someone and Maddie, I want you to work for me. So I'm ready to give you my job offer. And I know that like my salary may not be something that necessarily is going to attract you. But if I can say, Maddie, I see in you that you have A, B, and C in your skill set and in your personality. And I need that kind of person to work for me. Like you're going to make me a better manager. And that's going to inspire me to take you places that you've never been. And if you can tap into that in those candidates during that interview process, they're going to settle for what you have, not all the time, based on, what we've all been talking here. But I think for the right fit and the right personality, if you can tell that person, if you can identify specifically what it is about them that attracts you to them and how you're going to use them in your business in the future, I think they might come for what you can pay them.
I agree.
Wow, that was a lot of information, folks.
So now the next question. No, I'm just joking. We're all out of questions. We have no more.
So as we're finishing up this conversation, which we had a lot of information, I think our recorder device was like, this is so much, I don't know what to do with it. Oh my gosh. It cut out. So we're going to keep going with our backup and just finish this up. So what's our takeaway? What should we do?
What is our takeaway? We didn't write a
Well, I
challenge.
guess I would just hope that each of our 4 perspectives was able to give you, the listener, just maybe if it doesn't change your whole mindset, just a different view on what 4 very different people would think about situations.
When we first thought about doing this, I'm kind of a history buff in some ways, and some of the best kings and queens had advisors. And I think that as a director and owner, one of the first things that you said, I think it was you, Maddie said at the beginning was that, you don't want to have an echo chamber of the same ideas getting thrown around over and over again. So I think sometimes, I think we all have very different perspectives on things. And I think that showed a lot today. And I think that is important as an owner or a business owner in general, to kind of get a view into something that you may not normally be getting views into.
Right. So when you're thinking of, overhauling how you do childcare, I would suggest that you walk away today with, there's a lot of different perspectives. Your target market is very different. The age groups, the demographics, the ethnicities, everyone's going to have a different perception of, how you're running your business. And so don't get stuck in your head. Listen to the people around you, listen to your consumers, listen to your employees, and utilize what they have to say to potentially make adjustments in your company. But this was really great, you guys. I appreciate you. Daycare Overhaul is our podcast. Is I'm hoping a really great resource for childcare centers.
And we would love to have you submit questions, and we can do this again. And submit your questions, we'll compile them, and we'll ask each other again another list of questions.
So where can you do that?
You can email us, info@childcarebizhelp.com.
Cool.
Or submit on social. You can find us on all the social Childcare
Or
Biz
you
Help.
can comment under this video if you're watching on YouTube right now.
Thank you, Nick.
Please like it too.
Thank you, Maddie.
All right, well, I think that just what wraps it up, so we'll talk to you guys about to leave. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.